Nick Nurse made a subtle comment following last night's preseason game that I think a lot of Raptors fans missed, and it might indicate that DJ Wilson has a better shot than expected at making this year's roster. So I'll dive into his comments in this video. Additionally, we have a minor Otto Porter Jr. injury update to speak on, as well as some context to that highlight defensive play Fred VanVleet had on Colin Sexton, because those two guys have an interesting history that I want to speak on in this video. So a bunch of stuff to talk about. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here at the Raptors Digest, breaking down the latest Toronto Raptors news. And folks, if you guys want to stay up to date with everything surrounding the Toronto Raptors, if you want someone to react to games with live on this channel, watch along stuff, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out big time. And, we're jumping straight into the news. The first thing we're talking about is Nurse's subtle remark that Raptors fans have missed in his post-game presser last night. Now, obviously, it's great to see the Raptors back in action, see them on the court, and I know it's just preseason. I know they went up against a trash Utah Jazz team, but it's nice that they end up getting a blowout win as well, even with the bench unit and all that sort of stuff. But the real storyline, the real thing people are going to be talking about for the next couple of weeks is who's going to make this roster. And Nurse has made it known there's really 4 guys fighting for the 2 final roster positions, and that's Delano Banton, Justin Champagnie, Justin Jackson, and one guy that I think has been ignored, overlooked, a guy that's kind of been written off by a lot of Raptors fans, including myself, honestly, in the videos that we've made, and that's been DJ Wilson, who's sort of feels like the odd man out because obviously Champagnie, Delano Banton, they have a bunch of potential, right? They're young guys, they were rookies for us last year, and they're 2 guys that I am extremely high on. And Josh Jackson obviously has that stature of a former top 5 pick in the NBA, has had some pretty remarkable seasons with, not remarkable, but strong seasons over the course of his career, being a 13-plus point per game scorer with a solid defense. And just is an intriguing, exciting prospect who also had a tremendous game last night, which we're going to dive into in this video. But DJ Wilson doesn't really follow any of those crazy narratives that get Raptors fans excited. And for those reasons, as well as just the fact it doesn't seem to, skill level, doesn't do anything that jumps off the page or potential-wise that should put him ahead of any of these other players. That's why, at least in my opinion, he's been written off by a lot of Raptors fans, despite the fact he was on the team for a large chunk of last season, even despite suffering a serious injury over at the end of last year. He was brought back for Summer League, right? Brought back into training camp. And it's just clear that the front office likes this guy's game, and he is a solid contributor. He's 6'10", he can knock down threes, he plays strong defense, right? No one's going to be mad if DJ Wilson ends up making the team. They just might be bad for the fact that other guys would have to get cut for him to make the roster. That's the kind of context we have with DJ Wilson now. That's the reasons he's been written off. But comments from Nick Nurse last night indicate that it might not be a smart idea to write off him as being a guy that gets signed to this team right away. And these were his comments directly, the little snippet from his post-game interview that has me interested in DJ Wilson's prospects of being on this team.
Anybody else I'm missing, but I think it's going to be, and DJ. DJ's played good. He played good in this inner squad the other night. He's played good. Again, I think with his size and kind of shooting ability, that might be a positional need, but who knows? Long way to go yet.
So the part of that quote I really want to sort of sink my teeth into, and a little bit of the subtext, the mood behind the way he's making those comments. But the first thing is that might be a positional need for us, right? It sort of got dropped in there. It sort of got dropped almost with a somber tone, but that might be a positional need for us. Obviously, the Toronto Raptors, they struggled at the big man position for the past couple seasons at times, right? With Precious's emergence with Chris Boucher after drafting Koloko, it seems like less of a need coming into this season, but having veterans at that position that can be relied upon if people do get injured, right? I can see where Nick Nurse is coming from in saying that it might be a need for this Raptors squad to have another big man that can be insurance for this team. But the reason this really stuck out to me when I was listening to that post-game interview is just the tone. He seems almost a little bit somber, a little bit, I might be reading way too much into this, but it almost feels as if the way he's talking about Wilson, he knows Banton, Champagnie, even Josh Jackson have more potential, have more upside, but the Raptors just might have to play it safe with their 20th man on the roster. Some guy that you can be sure won't be a complete negative if you throw him out there on the court, right? He discussed his shooting. He discussed how he played well in the scrimmage game and played well tonight. And yes, he might not be as exciting of a player that coaches love to see, and the potential of a Delano Banton, be able to mold him into a roster spot, into a player that can be a significant contributor to the roster, right? That excites coaches. Champagnie to a lesser extent, but his rebounding is certainly something, a unique game that he has under his belt. Josh Jackson, I'll talk about him later, but Nurse is almost talking like, you know what? The Raptors, even though it's not exciting, even though I'm a little bit sad one of our tight guys might go, the Raptors just might have to go with the safe play, the boring play, and bring in DJ Wilson because he fits a positional need and he fits a spot on this team that, needs to be filled. We need to have shored up going into this year. So, I don't know. That's sort of the subtext. That's why I felt I was getting away from it. Let me know in the comment section if you disagree. I'm reading into things here. I'm reading the tea leaves, but that's what you got to do when you're picking out players for the start of a season. Let me know in the comment section below. But one guy that DJ Wilson is fighting with is Josh Jackson, and how he won over some Raptors coaches last night, and definitely some Toronto Raptors fans with his performance in last night's game. Because Josh Jackson, also in that post-game interview from Nick Nurse, talked about how the Raptors, their coaches and front office people, they're making votes every single day about the guys that they want to see brought back onto the team, the unguaranteed players that they want signed up to this squad coming into this season. And Josh Jackson, they said how performances of some guys last night have definitely jumbled up those voting systems. And the one guy that could clearly be, given his level of performance last night, is Josh Jackson. Because 10 points, could have been 12. He dumped one off to Gabe Brown to give him his first NBA points, or at least preseason points. But just looked absolutely smooth out there. His veteran leadership out there on the court was felt. And just a solid presence. And the same thing with DJ Wilson, having a guy that can sort of be reliable to give you a stable presence out there on the court. That's what you're looking for from your deep bench players, unless you're trying to develop them for future seasons. And Josh Jackson, I was shocked by how smooth he looked with his ball handling, with his dribbling. And I think one thing that gets overlooked about him as well, and I mentioned it in the DJ Wilson segment, he's had some big moments throughout his career, right? Like, his rookie season obviously averaged 13 points per game, was given more of a role with those Phoenix Suns squads, but not last year, but the season prior. Just one season ago, with the Detroit Pistons, averaged 13 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Not the greatest three-point shooter by any means, in the low 30s that year, at exactly 30%. But just a guy that can come in, be reliable. And just watching this guy play, he was more so known as a guy that could potentially develop into a 3-and-D player. And then his stock tarnished when he didn't really evolve that three-point shot. But he's definitely improved in the ball handling ability, and that paired alongside his athleticism can make him a very strong slasher for this Raptors team. Mixed alongside his defense, I think Josh Jackson was definitely a guy that changed the opinions of some Raptors coaches and Raptors fans in last night's performance. So let me know if you guys agree in the comment section below. Definitely going to be some hot debates between Wilson, Jackson, Champagnie, and Delano Banton. So I'm all for it. I'm all for the roast coming at me. I'm all for the people talking in the comments section. I want to hear what you guys have to think about the current roster situation. But the next thing we're talking about is Fred VanVleet getting revenge on Colin Sexton. Now, obviously, we discussed it last night. We discussed it in the post-game live stream. Definitely, if you guys join, especially if you join the channel this summer, we do post-game reactions to every single game on this channel. And it's a lot of fun getting in the chat. And we delivered our spicy PLA of the day last night. And that was Fred VanVleet absolutely clamping up Colin Sexton on the possession. Just chef's kiss defense from Fred VanVleet. You love seeing his knee healthy, being able to show what he can do, because I think his defensive reputation took a little bit of a hit in the playoffs, but that's solely because the guy was injured. Fred VanVleet is one of the best on-ball guard defenders in the entire NBA, so don't be sleeping on Fred. But this was just not some regular moment for Fred VanVleet and Colin Sexton. These two guys have a little bit of a history going back to the Tampa Tank year, the bubble season, where there's a moment in a game in March when the season was basically over, or right before the trade deadline. The season wasn't over for the Raptors, but things weren't looking too good. And there was a late quarter dust-up that resulted in double technical fouls with Colin, Sexton, and Norman Powell. The two players were battling on that final inbounds and started John shortly after Sexton and Fred VanVleet briefly exchanged words. So this is a moment, and there was the Raptors ended up getting slapped that game, as with many games, as will happen many games during that Tampa Tank season. But I looked actually back to our post-game reaction for that vid, and we ended up roasting Sexton for just being on a trash Cavs team at the time, how they were trying to talk smack to an NBA champion, a guy that already did it. And Fred VanVleet had an interesting quote at the end of that game as well. Basically said, I'm not going to speak on it too much. The only thing I will say is what my message was to anybody and everybody who would listen. It was like, I'm past the point of judging guys on how they play. We know the kid's a heck of a player. I want to judge the guys on their character as men, how you carry yourselves, and what you owe to this game. Because this game is great to us all. And so there was a little miscommunication here and there, some words that were said that shouldn't have been said. We addressed it and moved on from there. I didn't speak to him after the game. I told the other kid, Garland, I don't care how good you guys are, man. Like, that doesn't impress me. I've seen it all. I've done it all. Who are you going to be as a man? That was the only message. Other than that, I was going to speak on what goes on in the game, who said what to who did what. It's basketball. Emotions are high. I just think sometimes we can lose sight of how you should carry yourself sometimes. So again, lots of reading into little subtext and stuff, but that was a storyline, a narrative that was pretty significant during the Tampa Tank year because we had a bunch of games with the Cavs and there wasn't much to talk about during that season. So it's nice to see Fred VanVleet have a moment where he can just really give it to the kid that was giving him, trying to punch down on the Raptors during that season, try to talk smack to an NBA champion, a guy with the Finals MVP vote, a guy that went on to be an All-Star in Fred VanVleet. Colin Sexton, I know you're in Utah. I'm wishing you the best down there with the Utah Jazz, even though you're coming off the bench on one of the worst teams in NBA. Likely, definitely might be the worst team in the NBA coming into this year, right? You got your comeuppance for trying to talk smack to our guy Norman Powell and Fred VanVleet a couple seasons ago. But the final thing we're discussing in this video is an Otto Porter Jr. injury update. So, or actually not the final thing, but one of the final things. And I didn't get a full video out this weekend to address this injury situation. People were asking me on the live stream last night, where the heck is Otto Porter Jr.? Is he playing or not? Otto Porter Jr. is currently out with an injury, and these are guys that didn't participate in the scrimmage, and this is why he didn't play in the most recent game. But Otto Porter Jr. hurt his hamstring during training camp, and he recently went for an MRI, and basically all the information that we have on his injury is that he'll be out for a little while, per Nick Nurse. Now, that's unfortunate for a role player that has it's going to be a significant contributor to this Raptors team. He just won an NBA championship. We've raved about this free agent signing multiple times on this podcast, but it doesn't seem like it's anything that's going to be drastic, going to be anything that keeps him out for an extended period of time, but he will miss some time with this injury. So maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't think it'll be more than a month, but hamstring injuries are definitely something you don't want to rush back, especially for a guy like Otto Porter Jr., who's not a young buck like Delano Banton or Scotty Barnes, even though we wouldn't want them rushing back from injuries themselves. But veterans, they need to take some more time to rest, to recover. So wishing the best for Otto Porter Jr. Hopefully he comes back healthy. And the final thing we're discussing is the Toronto Raptors hiring Pascal Siakam's brother as a coach. And they brought in Pascal Siakam's brother to coach on the Raptors 905. And you can see Raptors have hired Christian Siakam, Pascal's older brother, to their coaching staff for this season. This is alongside a bunch of coaching staff, a big coaching staff they have down there at the 905. Obviously, Eric Cowrie, we discussed during the summer about how he takes a very analytical approach, has his physics degree from U of T. But it's cool seeing Siakam's brother get involved with the organization. Obviously, he spent a bunch of time last year with the 905 around the team, around the coaching staff. So it's cool that we're bringing in guys, developing coaches, have them around the team, and then bringing them up, giving them an opportunity to actually be on the staff. And the more coaches we have in the 905, the more development projects we can actually work on, the better players we'll get, like Christian Coloco, Delano Banton, if he's back down there at any point this season, or Jeff Doughton, Ron Harper Jr., all these guys. The more coaches we have, the better. So congrats to Christian Siakam. Love seeing him getting this opportunity. But folks, you guys are the best for making this far. Check out the Instagram, the TikTok, the Twitter, all that cool stuff. Subscribe to the channel, helps us out big time, and I'll keep plugging stuff. Courtside Digest, we're breaking down all the latest NBA news, so just check out that channel there. The Discord's live and running, so you can join that. And news on the Fantasy League will be coming out once the channel membership updates get approved by YouTube. So excited for all that. Anyways, enough of me rambling. You guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.